Army Staff Sergeant Laura Foster had applied to SEAL training 3 times, and 3 times she'd been rejected with the same form letter. Female candidates do not meet the physical requirements for SEAL operations. The instructors at Naval Special Warfare Command had made it clear that no woman would ever wear the trident. But when a terrorist attack on the Fort Bragg Special Operations Training Facility required immediate sniper response and every qualified marksman was deployed overseas, they called the one person they'd refused to train. "Foster, we need you on the rifle range in 5 minutes," Sergeant Major Thompson said, handing her a .50 caliber Barrett. "Show us what you can do at 1,200 meters." What happened next would change SEAL training forever. The morning had started like any other at Fort Bragg's Special Operations Training Complex. Laura Foster was conducting routine marksmanship training with a group of Army Rangers when the emergency alarm began screaming across the entire installation. Within minutes, the base had transformed from a training environment into an active combat zone as armed insurgents who had somehow infiltrated the facility began systematically hunting American military personnel. Laura had been assigned to Fort Bragg for 8 months following her 3rd and final rejection from SEAL training. Her personnel file read like a contradiction: expert marksman ratings on every weapon system the Army used, perfect physical fitness scores, exemplary performance in 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. But none of that mattered to the Naval Special Warfare Selection Board, who had made it abundantly clear that women would never be accepted into SEAL training. The rejection letters had been identical form responses that felt impersonal despite the magnitude of their impact on her career aspirations. Each contained the same cold assessment: female candidates lacked the physical strength, endurance, and psychological resilience required for special operations warfare. The language was clinical, bureaucratic, and absolute in its dismissal of her qualifications. "Foster, you're an outstanding soldier," Commander Patricia Hayes had told her during her final SEAL application interview. "But this program has physical requirements that exceed female physiological capabilities. We're not being discriminatory, we're being realistic about human biology." The rejection had stung, not because Laura questioned her own abilities, but because she understood that institutional barriers were preventing her from serving at the highest levels of military capability. She had spent her entire military career proving that competence transcended gender, only to encounter a wall that seemed impermeable regardless of her qualifications. But Laura had also learned that military careers were unpredictable and that opportunities to prove oneself could arrive in the most unexpected circumstances. The terrorist attack had been planned with military precision. Intelligence reports would later reveal that the insurgents had spent months studying Fort Bragg's security protocols, shift schedules, and personnel assignments. They had infiltrated the base disguised as civilian contractors, carrying concealed weapons and detailed maps of the facility's most critical areas. Their objective was to eliminate as many special operations personnel as possible while they were concentrated for a major joint training exercise that included representatives from multiple NATO countries. The psychological impact of successfully attacking America's premier special operations training facility would be devastating to military morale and international confidence in American security capabilities. The attack had been timed to coincide with the maximum concentration of special operations personnel on the base. Over 300 elite soldiers from multiple branches of service were participating in the exercise, along with foreign military observers and senior NATO officials who were evaluating joint operational capabilities. Within the first 20 minutes of the attack, 12 American soldiers had been killed and another 18 wounded. The insurgents were moving systematically through the training complex, hunting personnel with military efficiency and advanced weaponry that indicated sophisticated planning and external support. "All personnel, this is command," came the announcement over the base-wide communication system. "We have confirmed hostile forces operating within the installation. Seek immediate cover and await instructions from security personnel." Laura had been conducting rifle training at Range 47 when the attack began. Her first indication of trouble came when she heard automatic weapons fire from the direction of the main administrative complex, followed immediately by emergency sirens and radio chatter that indicated the base was under coordinated assault. Her training kicked in immediately. Laura secured her training weapons, ensured the safety of the soldiers under her supervision, and began moving toward the sound of gunfire to determine how she could contribute to the base's defense. "Foster, report to the range tower immediately," came the urgent transmission over her tactical radio. "We need every qualified marksman available for immediate response." The range tower was Fort Bragg's primary sniper training facility, positioned on elevated ground that provided commanding views of the entire Special Operations Complex. Laura had trained there countless times during her assignment to the base, but she had never approached it under combat conditions. Sergeant Major Thompson was waiting for her when she arrived, along with Lieutenant Colonel Davis, the base's senior Special Operations Commander. Both men looked grim as they studied tactical displays showing the insurgents' movements throughout the facility. "Foster, we have a situation that requires immediate precision shooting," Thompson said without preamble. "Every qualified sniper on this installation is either deployed overseas, wounded, or pinned down by enemy fire." Laura looked at the tactical display, noting the red markers that indicated hostile positions throughout the complex. The insurgents had positioned themselves with clear fields of fire covering the most likely response routes, effectively trapping American personnel in areas where they could be systematically eliminated. "Sir, what's the tactical situation?" Laura asked. 15 confirmed hostiles armed with military-grade weapons, Colonel Davis replied. "They're moving systematically through the training areas, eliminating our people and working their way toward the command bunker where we have visiting NATO officials conducting strategic planning sessions." Laura studied the enemy positions, calculating ranges, environmental factors, and the complexity of engaging multiple targets spread across a 2,000-meter area. It was exactly the kind of scenario she had trained for throughout her military career, but had never been permitted to execute in the special operations context she had sought through SEAL training. "Sir, what are the engagement parameters?" she asked. 15 shots, 15 targets, ranges from 600 to 1,400 meters, Thompson replied. "Wind conditions are marginal, light is deteriorating, and you have approximately 90 seconds per engagement before they reach critical areas." Laura absorbed the information, understanding that she was being asked to accomplish something that would challenge the capabilities of the most experienced military snipers. The distances were at the extreme end of effective rifle range. The environmental conditions were less than optimal. The time constraints meant she would have to engage targets with speed that pushed the limits of precision shooting. But she also understood that this was the opportunity she had been preparing for throughout her military career, the chance to prove that her capabilities exceeded the institutional barriers that had prevented her from serving in elite units. "Sir, I need to know about the weapon system and ammunition," Laura said. Thompson led her to a gun case containing a Barrett M82A 1.50 caliber sniper rifle, one of the most powerful precision weapons in the American military inventory. The weapon was capable of engaging targets at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, but it required extraordinary skill to employ effectively under combat conditions. "Match-grade ammunition, bipod, and advanced optics," Thompson said. "Everything you need to make shots that most people would consider impossible." Laura examined the weapon, checking the scope settings, ammunition specifications, and environmental factors that would affect bullet trajectory over extreme distances. Her experience with similar systems during her combat deployments had taught her to calculate wind drift, atmospheric pressure variations, and target movement patterns that could mean the difference between success and failure. The Barrett M82A1 was a weapon system she had trained with extensively during her deployments to Afghanistan, where long-range precision shooting was often required to protect American forces from insurgent snipers operating at extreme distances. She understood its capabilities, limitations, and the technical expertise required to employ it effectively under combat stress. "Sir, I need current weather data and detailed information about each target's position and movement patterns," Laura said. Colonel Davis handed her a tablet containing real-time intelligence about each hostile position. Laura studied the information methodically, understanding that successful engagement would require her to think like both a sniper and a tactical analyst. Target 1 was positioned on the roof of the administrative building, 847 meters from the range tower. The insurgent was armed with a scoped rifle and had clear fields of fire covering the main approach routes to the command bunker. Wind conditions would require compensation of approximately 8 inches to the left. Target 2 was located in a second-story window of the logistics building, 1,127 meters distant. This position commanded the helicopter landing zone where medical evacuations were attempting to remove wounded personnel. The range required maximum precision to avoid collateral damage to nearby American forces. Laura continued her analysis, calculating engagement sequences that would neutralize the most dangerous threats first while preventing the remaining insurgents from repositioning to more advantageous locations. "Sir, I need confirmation that all friendly forces are clear of the engagement areas," Laura said. Confirmed. All American personnel have been accounted for and are either in secure positions or have been evacuated from potential danger zones, Davis replied. Laura positioned herself at the shooting platform, adjusting the rifle's bipod and checking the scope alignment. The Barrett M82A1 was a precision instrument, but its effectiveness depended entirely on the skill of the operator and their ability to calculate complex ballistic equations under extreme pressure. Her first target was the insurgent on the administrative building roof. Laura calculated wind speed, atmospheric conditions, and the slight upward angle required to compensate for the target's elevated position. The mathematics had to be perfect. A miss would alert the remaining insurgents to her position and potentially compromise the entire engagement. Laura controlled her breathing, allowing her heart rate to slow to the rhythm she had developed through thousands of hours of precision shooting training. The crosshairs settled on the target's center mass. She exhaled half her breath and held it, applying steady pressure to the trigger. The .50 caliber round traveled the 847 meters to target in approximately 1.2 seconds. The insurgent dropped immediately, eliminated with a single precision shot that announced to the remaining hostiles that they were now being hunted by someone with extraordinary capabilities. Target 1 neutralized, Laura reported over the radio, already transitioning to her second engagement. Target 2 required a more complex shot due to the increased range and the insurgent's position in a window that provided limited exposure. Laura adjusted her scope elevation and calculated wind drift for the 1,127-meter engagement. The target was partially concealed, requiring her to time her shot for the moment when he would be most exposed. The insurgent moved into her crosshairs exactly as she had predicted. Laura fired, and 1.3 seconds later, Target 2 was eliminated. 2 down, 13 to go, she transmitted. Over the next 20 minutes, Laura systematically engaged each hostile position with shots that demonstrated precision shooting capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. Each target required complex calculations that accounted for range, wind conditions, atmospheric pressure, and target movement patterns. Target 3. 1,203 meters, moving target, crosswind at 12 miles per hour, eliminated with a single shot that caught the insurgent mid-stride. Target 4. 956 meters, partially concealed position, precise timing required to avoid hitting cover material, neutralized during a 3-second window of opportunity. Target 5. 1,387 meters, maximum effective range, deteriorating light conditions, eliminated with a shot that pushed the limits of both weapon system and human capability. Each successful engagement was met with radio confirmations from American personnel who had been pinned down by the insurgents. Laura's precision shooting was systematically dismantling the terrorist attack and saving the lives of soldiers who had been trapped in kill zones throughout the facility. "Foster, you're doing impossible work out there," Colonel Davis transmitted after her 8th successful engagement. 7 targets remaining. Laura was entering the most challenging phase of the engagement. The remaining insurgents had realized they were being systematically eliminated by a precision shooter and had begun taking cover in positions that made targeting extremely difficult. Target 9 was located in a basement window of the supply building, requiring Laura to thread her shot through a gap barely 12 inches wide at a range of 1,089 meters. The angle was severe, the target exposure minimal, and the margin for error non-existent. Laura calculated the shot geometry, accounting for the steep downward angle and the way it would affect bullet trajectory. She waited for the insurgent to move into the narrow window of engagement opportunity, then fired. The shot was perfect, eliminating the target through precision that would have challenged the world's most capable snipers. 9 down, 6 remaining, she reported. The final 6 targets had concentrated themselves in positions that provided mutual covering fire while minimizing their exposure to rifle fire. Laura realized she would need to engage them in rapid sequence to prevent the survivors from repositioning or escaping to continue their attack elsewhere on the base. Target 10 was positioned behind partial cover at 1,156 meters. Laura's shot had to account for wind conditions that had shifted during the engagement, requiring real-time adjustment of her calculations. Target 11 required precise timing to catch the insurgent during a 3-second movement between covered positions at 1,034 meters range. Target 12 was the most challenging yet, a moving target at 1,298 meters who was using tactical movement techniques that indicated military training. Laura engaged each target with methodical precision, demonstrating shooting capabilities that exceeded what most military personnel would consider possible under combat conditions. 3 targets remaining, Colonel Davis transmitted. Outstanding work, Foster. The final 3 insurgents had realized that their mission was failing and were attempting to escape through the eastern perimeter of the base. Laura had to engage them while they were moving across open ground, requiring her to lead moving targets at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. Target 13. 1,145 meters, moving at approximately 8 miles per hour across her field of fire. Laura calculated the lead time required and placed her shot precisely where the insurgent would be when the bullet arrived. Perfect hit. Target 14. 1,287 meters, moving target using cover and concealment techniques. Laura waited for the moment when the insurgent would be most exposed, then delivered a shot that eliminated the threat with surgical precision. Target 15. 1,356 meters maximum range, moving target in deteriorating light conditions. This was the shot that would determine whether Laura had accomplished something unprecedented in modern military history. Laura calculated every variable that would affect the bullet's trajectory over the 1,356-meter distance to the target: wind speed and direction, atmospheric pressure variations, the slight downward angle, the target's movement speed and direction. She controlled her breathing, allowing her physiological systems to achieve the perfect stillness that precision shooting required. The crosshairs tracked the moving target, calculating the precise moment when all variables would align for a successful engagement. Laura exhaled, held her breath, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled for 1.44 seconds before finding its target, eliminating the final insurgent with a shot that would be analyzed and studied by military marksmanship experts for years to come. All targets neutralized, Laura transmitted. Threat eliminated. The silence that followed was broken by cheers from American personnel throughout the facility who had been trapped by the insurgents' attack. Laura had single-handedly neutralized a coordinated terrorist assault using precision shooting capabilities that demonstrated mastery of skills that the military had claimed women could not develop. Colonel Davis arrived at the range tower 20 minutes later, accompanied by Sergeant Major Thompson and several other senior officers who had witnessed Laura's performance through spotting scopes and radio communications. "Foster, what you just accomplished will be studied in military academies for decades," Davis said. 15 consecutive hits at extended range under combat conditions, many at distances that challenge the theoretical limits of the weapon system. Laura secured the Barrett rifle, checking to ensure it was safe and properly maintained after the extended engagement. Her focus remained professional despite the magnitude of what she had just achieved. "Sir, I was doing my job. American personnel were under attack, and I had the training and equipment necessary to neutralize the threat." Thompson studied the engagement data that had been recorded during the shootout. "Foster, you just demonstrated shooting capabilities that exceed what we expect from our most experienced special operations snipers. Every shot was perfect, 0 misses, 0 collateral damage, mission accomplished with minimal resources." The statistical analysis of Laura's performance would become legendary within military circles. 15 shots fired over a period of 47 minutes, 15 targets eliminated at ranges from 847 to 1,356 meters, 0 misses, 0 incidents of collateral damage. Perfect execution under combat conditions that would have challenged the world's most experienced military snipers. Her performance had been recorded by multiple observation systems, creating documentation that would be studied by military training experts, ballistic specialists, and tactical analysts for years to come. The engagement represented a master class in precision shooting that demonstrated capabilities most people considered theoretically impossible. 3 hours later, Laura found herself in a secure briefing room with Colonel Davis in a secure video connection to the Pentagon, where senior military leadership was reviewing the engagement data and discussing its implications for special operations training and gender integration policies. "Staff Sergeant Foster," came the voice from the Pentagon connection. "This is Admiral Richardson, Commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. I understand you've previously applied for SEAL training." "Yes, sir. 3 applications, 3 rejections based on physical fitness requirements." "Staff Sergeant, I've reviewed your performance data from today's engagement. You demonstrated precision shooting capabilities that exceed what we typically see from SEAL-qualified snipers. You accomplished something that most people would consider impossible." Laura waited, understanding that her performance had created a situation that challenged fundamental assumptions about gender integration in special operations forces. "Staff Sergeant Foster, I'm personally inviting you to report to Naval Special Warfare Command for immediate evaluation for SEAL training." Your performance today has demonstrated capabilities that transcend any concerns about physical fitness standards. The invitation represented everything Laura had worked toward throughout her military career, official recognition that her capabilities qualified her for the most elite levels of military service. "Sir, I accept the invitation," Laura replied. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Laura Foster became the first woman to complete SEAL training, graduating first in her class and earning the trident that had seemed impossible just 1 year earlier. Her 15 consecutive hits during the Fort Bragg terrorist attack had not only saved American lives, they had shattered barriers that had prevented women from serving in roles where their capabilities could contribute to national security at the highest levels. The engagement became a case study taught throughout the military, demonstrating that individual performance under pressure was the only meaningful measure of qualification for elite military units. Laura's shooting record that day, 15 shots, 15 hits, ranges from 600 to 1,356 meters, 0 misses, mission accomplished, became the standard by which precision shooting was measured throughout the special operations community. But more importantly, her performance had proven that capability and courage had no gender, and that the military's most important mission was ensuring that the most qualified personnel served in roles where their skills could protect American lives and interests. The 15 shots that Laura Foster fired that day changed more than just the immediate tactical situation at Fort Bragg. They changed the fundamental understanding of what was possible when barriers were removed and performance became the only criterion that mattered. Some barriers were constructed from concrete and steel. Others were built from assumptions and prejudice. Laura Foster had proven that the right person with the right skills at the right moment could shatter both kinds of barriers with precision that transcended every limitation that others had tried to impose. Her story became inspiration for military personnel who faced institutional barriers based on characteristics unrelated to their actual capabilities. The engagement at Fort Bragg proved that excellence recognized no boundaries except those imposed by individuals who demanded the highest standards from themselves. The military's integration policies were fundamentally restructured following Laura's performance. Physical fitness standards were revised to emphasize functional capability rather than arbitrary measurements that bore no relationship to operational effectiveness. Training programs were modified to focus on individual performance under pressure rather than demographic characteristics that had no bearing on combat effectiveness. Most importantly, selection criteria for elite military units were restructured to prioritize demonstrated capability over preconceived notions about who could succeed in high-pressure operational environments. 15 shots, 15 hits, and one woman's determination had rewritten the rules about who could serve at the highest levels of American military capability. The trident she earned represented more than personal achievement. It represented proof that excellence recognized no boundaries except those imposed by individuals who were willing to demand the highest standards from themselves when it mattered most. Laura Foster had taken 15 shots that changed everything, and she hadn't missed once.